Continuing from the previous episode 286. Chapter 12:15. Death Soul Mountain Range. Human figures were scattered around in some seats within a spacious hall. The atmosphere within the hall was quite solemn. Ever since Xiao Yan had walked into the large hall, he had been staring intently at Zhang Kongzi trio. Even his breathing had become a little hurried because of his excitement. It had been around 5 or 6 years since Yao Lao had been captured back then until now. Although Yao Lao's life had not been at risk during these 5 or 6 years, the suffering he had endured was definitely unbelievable. All of Xiao Yan's abilities had come about because Yao Lao paved the way for him. It was due to Yao Lao that Xiao Yan had been able to reach such a height. Hence, as long as it was something related to Yao Lao, Xiao Yan's emotions would fluctuate a little. Little fellow, do not allow your mind to become chaotic. Rescuing Yao Lao is not a simple matter. If anything wrong occurs midway, it would be equivalent to delivering a goat to the mouth of a tiger. Zhang Kongzi involuntarily shook his head and spoke when he saw Xiao Yan's eyes. Xiao Yan gently nodded upon hearing Zhang Kongzi's scolding words. Xiao Yan took a couple of deep breaths and suppressed his fluctuating mind. His eyes once again recovered their calmness. He softly asked, "Why was the information regarding this collected so quickly?" "It cannot be considered quick. If one wanted to really talk about it, we have collected this information for nearly a year in order to obtain this news. However, we have only managed to confirm it now." Zhang Kongzi smiled as he answered. "Where has the Hall of Souls transferred, teacher?" Xiao Yan's eyes did not blink as he stared at Zhang Kongzi and swiftly asked. Zhang Kongzi smiled. He took out a map scroll from his storage ring before spreading it apart on the table. His finger pointed to the northwestern part of the Central Plains and said, "There are quite a number of secretive branch halls within the Central Plains of the Hall of Souls. An ordinary person would not be able to discover them. There is a Death Soul Mountain Range in the northwestern region. That place hides a branch hall of the Hall of Souls. Has teacher been transferred to this Death Soul Mountain Range's branch hall?" Xiao Yan's eyes flickered as he asked. "Yes." Zhang Kongzi slightly nodded and said, "This Death Soul Mountain Range can be considered a dangerous place within the Central Plains. For some unknown reason, the cold qi in that place is extremely dense. Cold fog covers the sun. If one were to randomly barge in, one would end up lost within it. Moreover, there are quite a number of powerful and unusually bloodthirsty magical beasts within the mountain range. It is extremely troublesome to deal with them. Probably the reason why the Hall of Souls established a branch hall is because the concealment of this place had caught its eye." Death Soul Mountain Range. Xiao Yan softly muttered this name in his mouth. Since he was aware of the location where Yao Lao was being imprisoned, he would definitely make an attempt without hesitation even if he had to enter an extremely treacherous place. How many experts are there in that Hall of Souls branch hall? How many dozuns are there? The little fairy doctor by the side softly posed the most important question. Xiao Yan would become a little excited when he met with anything related to Yao Lao. At this moment, she could only pay more attention to the situation. Xiao Yan also became clear-headed after hearing the little fairy doctor's question. He hurriedly nodded. This was the most important question. If they were unable to clearly probe the other party's defensive strength, randomly barging in would only deliver themselves to be captured. The Hall of Souls really values Yao Chen. The defensive strength watching him is definitely not too weak. Based on the information we have obtained, there is likely 5 elite dozuns guarding the Death Soul Mountain Range. Even Zhang Kongzi's expression had become a little more serious when he spoke until this point. 5 dozuns. This lineup was extremely powerful even when placed within the Central Plains. It belonged to the level where all they needed to do was stomp their feet and many top-tier factions would be frightened to the point of peeing their pants. 5 dozuns. Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. His mouth involuntarily inhaled a gentle breath of cool air. This strength was really a little too great. The Hall of Souls had dispatched 5 dozuns just to guard a branch hall. This lineup was sufficient to wash a top-tier faction in blood. The little fairy doctor and Tianhuo Zun also had faces that were a lot more grave. Clearly, they were shaken by the strength of this Hall of Souls. Xiao Yan calculated that there were, at the very most, 3 dozuns beside him if he included the Sky Demon puppet. Currently, he was also able to hold back an elite dozun. However, if he were to face 2 of them, it was likely that he could only turn around and flee. Now, we can only wait for Feng Zun-Jie to come. If we add him, we should close to enough enormous people to give it a try. Xiao Yan mused in his heart. Are these all the Do Zuns in that branch hall? The little fairy doctor fell silent for a moment before asking again. Based on the information we got our hands on, there should only be 5 Do Zuns. However, the branch hall definitely still has some Hall of Souls protectors. Their combined fighting strength would also be quite strong. Zhang Kongzi said, those protectors cannot be considered much trouble. However, all of you need to beware of meeting a Tianjun. Zan Yi by the side spoke with a grave face. Tianjun? Xiao Yan's group was startled when they heard this foreign name. The Hall of Souls protectors are divided into the Sky, Earth, and Man category. Although the Honorable Elders do not have such a strict division, they are similarly divided according to rank. Tianjun are the strongest experts among the Honorable Elder ranking. As for their strength, the only thing you need to know is that even old Mu Ji is not qualified to be a Tianjun in the Hall of Souls. Zan Yi explained in a deep voice. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. Old Mu Gu's strength should be around that of a 3-star Do Zun. Even he did not possess the qualification to be a Tianjun. Would it not be the case that these Tianins of the Hall of Souls were all at least 5-star Do Zuns? Even with Xiao Yan's calmness, his brows were involuntarily knit when he thought of this. There was vast difference between every level within the Do Zun class. Many Do Zuns had spent dozens of years without being able to raise their strength by 1 star. From this, one could tell just what kind of terrifying gap was present between every star within the Do Zun class. 5-star Do Zuns. It was likely that even the combined strength of Little Fairy Doctor and the Sky Demon Puppet would be able to fight them, but then the originally few Do Zuns on Xiao Yan's side would be even more limited. This Hall of Souls is indeed terrifying. Xiao Yan exhaled a deep breath of air. Even though he really did not wish to admit it, he still involuntarily emitted a sigh at this moment. Even across the entire continent, it was likely hardly anyone could fight against such a terrifying strength with the exception of those factions that had originated since ancient times like the Jiyu clan. There is no need to worry. Tianins have extremely high positions within the Hall of Souls. They will usually not easily reveal themselves. 5 Do Zuns guarding Yao Chen. This is already an extremely high standard. If another Tianjun is added, it would cause one to feel incredulous. Zan Kongzi waved his hand and spoke when he saw Xiao Yan's solemn expression. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. At this moment, he could only think in this manner. Since the status of these fellows were so high, it was unlikely for them to stay in a branch hall for no reason. After all, an expert should have the eccentricness of an expert. This is the information that we have obtained. The Pill region is not far from the Death Soul Mountain range. It should be enough to reach there in 5 days or so. Zan Kongzi slowly spoke. After which, he took out a goatskin scroll and handed it to Xiao Yan. This is the map of the interior of the Death Soul Mountain range. The branch hall of the Hall of Souls is located in the middle of the mountain range. Xiao Yan received the map and opened it. After which, he carefully studied the map. The map was extremely detailed. Although the cold fog within the mountain range was extremely dense, relying on such a precise map to successfully enter the range would not be too difficult. Thank you very much, old Zan. Xiao Yan stored the map in his storage ring, cupped his hands together, and thanked Zan Kongzi. This is merely a trivial matter. However, this is all we can help you with. All of you will have to rely on yourselves for the final action. Zan Kongzi waved his hand and sighed. Xiao Yan smiled and said, if the Pill Tower had not helped us gather information, we do not know just when it would have been until we had found the location where Teacher is imprisoned. Therefore, this is not a trivial matter. Zan Kongzi bitterly smiled and nodded. He asked, when are all of you preparing to act? Xiao Yan mused for a moment before replying, this operation must be well prepared. Therefore, we must wait until Feng Zun-Jie hurries over. Oh, haha, that old fellow, huh? Zan Kongzi involuntarily laughed when he heard Feng Zun-Jie being mentioned. He said, that old fellow has an extremely good relationship with Yao Chen. Finding him will indeed be of great help. Moreover, he is extremely experienced. With him following all of you, we will definitely feel more reassured. Xiao Yan smiled and nodded. Feng Zun-Jie could be considered a renowned expert across the Central Plains region. He had frequently come into contact with the Hall of Souls during the years he had searched for traces of Yao Lao. With him joining this operation, they would be able to understand a little more about the Hall of Souls. He would also boost their confidence in finally rescuing Yao Lao. Even though this is the case, let's wait for news from the old fellow. With his speed, it should be possible for him to reach the Pill region in half a month's time. Zhang Kongzi fondled his beard and laughed. Xiaoyan slightly smiled slightly. Half a month? During this half a month, he needed to try his best to raise the strength of their group. It was time to refine the fungus green pill for Tian Huo Zun Jie. If the strength of the people on his side was a little stronger, the chances of them succeeding would also increase. However, no matter how much more his conviction grew, this trip would be the most dangerous and important operation that Xiaoyan has ever undertaken. Therefore, he needed to do his best. He must not allow even the slightest reason to cause any mistake to occur during this operation. After chatting a little with Zhang Kongzi and the others about areas they should take note of relating to the Hall of Souls and the Death Soul Mountain Range, Xiaoyan ceased remaining any longer. He directed the little fairy doctor and the rest as they cupped their hands together and bade the others goodbye. After which, they hurriedly left. They were currently pressed for time, and they could not afford to squander it. Zhang Kongzi and the two others exchanged looks with each other after watching Xiaoyan's group's backs leave through the door. They also softly sighed. Hopefully this trip of theirs will be smooth. It has been many years since anyone has witnessed someone snatch a person from the hands of the Hall of Souls. I wonder if they will succeed this time around? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 287. Chapter 1216. All prepared, Xiaoyan was seated cross-legged on the bed within his room. His finger was rubbing a blood-red storage ring in his hand. It was the ring he had forcefully snatched from Yi Chen's hand. This fellow possessed a high position within the profound sky sect. It was likely that the things within the ring would not be too lousy. This is interest. Xiaoyan softly laughed. A thought passed through his mind and a trace of spiritual strength spread from between his brows. After which, it invaded the blood-red storage ring. However, the spiritual strength had just made contact with the ring when it was repelled by a force. A spiritual imprint has been placed on it, huh? Xiaoyan raised his eyebrows when his spiritual strength was repelled. The strength of that Yi Chen was quite great. However, if they were to compare his strength in terms of spiritual strength, it was likely that even 10 Yi Chen were unable to surpass Xiaoyan. This kind of spiritual imprint appeared to be without any defensive properties from Xiaoyan's point of view. Xiaoyan's finger gently rubbed over the blood-red storage ring. A vast and mighty strength surged out like floodwaters. One could hear a slight cracking sound as the spiritual imprint within the storage ring was forcefully removed by Xiaoyan. After easily removing the spiritual imprint on the storage ring, Xiaoyan's spiritual strength finally entered it without any obstacles. He briefly searched it and a blood-red scroll appeared in his hand with a flash. Blood Evil Skill. Xiaoyan swept his eyes over the scroll. After which, they paused on the 3 blood-red words at the top. A wave of a dense bloody scent immediately poured out of it. Xiaoyan carefully opened the scroll. He briefly glanced at the introduction to this qi method within the scroll, and his brows were involuntarily knit. A moment later, he softly said, "It is indeed bloody." This kind of qi method is far too evil and also far too cruel. Swallowing the flesh and blood of others to absorb the other party's do qi. This kind of tactic is really vicious. This so-called blood evil skill could be considered a top-level qi method even within the profound sky sect. This was something that could be observed from how Yi Chen managed to rely on it to reach the peak of the Dozong class when he was only around 30 years old. Although there were other reasons like his outstanding talent, most of it was due to the unusual process of this blood evil skill. However, this kind of tactic that relies on absorbing the strength of others to become stronger is not considered an excellent one. If one absorbs too much do qi, one's own do qi will have difficulty becoming pure. After reaching a certain level, one would have difficulty advancing even an inch forward. Unless one scatters one's power and retrains, one would even gradually suffer a backlash from the impure do qi. After briefly reading this so-called blood evil skill, Xiaoyan also managed to find some of the drawbacks of this qi method. This thing would allow one to swiftly grow strong, but the sequelae was really too great. Moreover, The process was also extremely cruel and bloody. Unless it was someone who was naturally cold and indifferent, one would not be able to practice this kind of qi method. Profound Sky Sect. What an evil sect. Xiao Yan shook his head and randomly stored this blood-evil skill into his storage ring. No matter how one put it, this could barely be considered a D-class high-level qi method. If he took it out to be auctioned in the future, he would definitely be able to exchange it for some extremely valuable items. After Xiao Yan took the blood-evil skill, he searched for a while, but he did not find anything else that could interest him. Just when he planned on giving up, his sweeping spiritual strength suddenly stopped in a certain part of the storage ring. There was an inconspicuous, gray scroll. Xiao Yan could vaguely sense a faint killing intent seeping out of the scroll. This is... Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. This kind of killing aura was something that he was familiar with. After recalling this familiarity, he finally discovered that it seemed to be powerful Do skill that Yi Chen had used near the end of their match. It contained a murderous aura that seemed to snatch the mind of another. Xiao Yan clenched his hand. A gray-colored scroll appeared in it. He flicked his finger and pulled it open. A couple of ordinary words, permeated with killing intent, appeared in his sight. Heaven Offering Demon Hand. Xiao Yan softly mumbled those words. A glint flashed across his eyes at the same time. This thing was indeed the final attack that Yi Chen had displayed earlier. When they had fought earlier, Xiao Yan had personally experienced the strength of this so-called Heaven Offering Demon Hand. That sharp killing intent was indeed extremely strong. Fortunately, Yi Chen had clearly yet to master it to its peak. His killing aura had been significantly diluted, perhaps because the bloody qi in his body was overly dense. This Heaven Offering Demon Hand required an unhesitating desire to kill. Such a killing desire was born from one's thoughts. It was not something that could be supplemented by relying on blood qi. This thing could be considered one of the ultimate skills of the Profound Sky Sect. Its strength is definitely beyond what Yi Chen had displayed. That fellow is far too arrogant. This caused him to be unable to understand the true meaning of the Heaven Offering Demon Hand. Xiao Yan carefully studied this scroll before exhaling a deep breath and speaking with some interest. Based on Xiao Yan's guess, if this Heaven Offering Demon Hand were to be fully unleashed, its might would likely only be able surpassed if one learned the fifth seal of the God Seal skill. This thing was indeed unique for it to become an ultimate skill within the Profound Sky Sect. Xiao Yan's hand gently rubbed the scroll. The smile on his face became more dense. It was unexpected that Yi Chen would deliver such a treasure this time around. If Xiao Yan was able to learn this Heaven Offering Demon Hand, his fighting strength would definitely rise. He would also possess an additional fighting technique when battling with others in the future. Moreover, they would begin their operation to rescue Yao Lao very soon. By having this Heaven Offering Demon Hand delivered to him, it must be said that Yi Chen was just like a timely downpour. Due to the need to wait for the arrival of Feng Zunjie, Xiao Yan's group still had time to prepare. Though, such a dangerous operation would appear rushed no matter how long one had to prepare. Hence, Xiao Yan had once again chosen to undertake a retreat after having obtained the information from the three great heads. During this retreat, Xiao Yan not only needed to help Tianhuo Zunjie refine the fungus green pill before Feng Zunjie arrived, but he would also need to find some time to familiarize and practice the Heaven Offering Demon Hand. One additional skill would mean an additional net of safety. Similarly, it would also mean that his confidence to succeed would increase. Regardless of whether this would be insignificant or not, it would be better prepare more in order to rescue Yao Lao. The little fairy doctor and the others were helpless in the face of Xiao Yan's somewhat crazy retreat. After having followed Xiao Yan around for so many years, she was aware of just how much effort Xiao Yan had put in to rescue his teacher. Now that everything was falling into place, he would naturally not dare to relax even a little. Being influenced by Xiao Yan, the little fairy doctor and Tianhuo Zunjie did not leave during this period of time. They understood the importance of this operation to Xiao Yan. Therefore, they tried to increase their strength a little in order to boost their likelihood of success. The insane training of these people caused Zan Kongzi and the rest to feel a little helpless. However, they could empathize with them. Hence, they issued the order not to disturb Xiao Yan's group. Moreover, they had even dispatched some female servants there. If Xiao Yan lacked something during his pill refinement, the pill tower would swiftly deliver it to him. Half a year quietly passed while Xiao Yan undertook a retreat where he forgot to eat or sleep. During this half a month, the Pill Tower was faced with a commotion. This commotion was due to a thundercloud suddenly appearing in the sky above the Pill Tower. Moreover, there were two faint colors in the thundercloud. The thundercloud was surprisingly a two-colored pill lightning. From the looks of it, it was obvious that some alchemist guru within the Pill Tower had refined a Tier 8 medicinal pill. When they felt surprised at the pill lightning lingering in the sky, a golden light was suddenly emitted from the Pill Tower. After which, the light floated in the sky and received the violent strike from the two-colored pill lightning in front of a countless number of speechless people. Next, the light landed without being hurt and disappeared in a flash. The people from the Pill Tower were familiar with this scene. When the golden-colored figure appeared, all of them understood Nu was refining a Tier 8 medicinal pill, the champion of this pill gathering, Xiao Yan. Admiration filled quite a number of alchemists when they figured out who was refining this pill. Tier 8 medicinal pills were too far for them to reach. However, it appeared as though those pills were readily available to the hands of Xiao Yan, who appeared even younger than them. This kind of comparison caused them to feel embarrassed. One should really not compare two different people. 2 days after the pill lightning ended, Xiao Yan finally left his half-a-month-long retreat. However, his disheveled appearance appeared quite miserable. Although Xiao Yan looked miserable, it did not hinder the excitement on his face. After failing 3 times, he had finally successfully refined the fungus green pill. Tianhuo Zunjie, who had been guarding Xiao Yan's room outside, revealed a stunned expression when he saw Xiao Yan's miserable appearance. However, when Xiao Yan tossed him a deep green, round medicinal pill with a strong spiritual aura, he was instantly excited. Without saying anything unnecessary, he grabbed the medicinal pill and entered another chamber. Watching how quickly he left, Xiao Yan involuntarily laughed. During this retreat, he had not only managed to successfully refine the fungus green pill, he had also gained a basic understanding of the heaven-offering demon hand. On the whole, he had acquired a lot. Xiao Yan finally rested after having left his retreat and having prepared everything he needed to. He calmly recuperated for 2 days before his condition returned to its peak. The only thing that he needed to do was to wait Feng Zunjie to arrive. After which, they would leave and rescue Yao Lao. Xiao Yan's wait did not last very long. On the 5th day after he had left his retreat, Xiao Yan was practicing the heaven-offering demon hand, but he suddenly stood up from his chair. He sensed a familiar, mighty aura appearing within his area of perception at this moment. Feng Zunjie had arrived. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 288. Chapter 1217. Rescue Mission. The top level of the Pill Tower consisted of an extremely spacious and grand hall. Normally, the great heads of the Pill Tower would only receive guests here when they were VIPs. At this moment, there were some figures randomly seated within this large hall, that had been vacated for a long time. A female servant was respectfully pouring tea. KK, Feng Zunjie, it has been many years since we have last seen each other. You still have that free and easy manner. Zhang Kongzi in the leader's seat looked at a green-clothed, old man with a smile on his face and laughed. The green-clothed, old man was naturally Feng Zunjie, who had traveled non-stop from the Falling Star Pavilion after having received Xiao Yan's message. He merely shook his head and laughed after hearing Zhang Kongzi's words. How can I be as comfortable as you, a great head? My Falling Star Pavilion is merely a small character when compared to the Pill Tower. There was a somewhat old-fashioned man was seated beside Feng Zunjie. His body was rigid. It was as straight as a spear, giving one a kind of sharp feeling. It was as though the one seated was not a person, but a sword that contained a sharp aura. KK, the old me has not left the pill region for a long time. May I know who this friend is? Zhang Kongzi's eyes slid to the old-fashioned man as he asked with a smile. I have long since forgotten my old name. Subsequently, I have created a name for myself, Tai Jian, Metal Sword. This old-fashioned man was polite to Zhang Kongzi. He cupped his hands together, and his face revealed a somewhat ugly smile. Tai Jian? Could it be Tianjian Zunjie who washed the Jade Sword Gate in blood 5 years ago? Surprise immediately flashed over Zhang Kongzi's face as he asked. The face of the old man Tai Jian moved a little before nodding. Clearly, He did not wish to linger on this topic for long. This old fellow's character is just like this. The enmity between he and the Jade Sword sect is too deep. It is difficult to explain everything in a short time. Feng Zun-Jie laughed and suddenly swept his eyes over the large hall. He asked, "Where is Xiao Yan? That little fellow has summoned me here. Don't tell me that he is not even going to show himself?" "KK, what is old Feng saying? How can this member of the younger generation fool an elder like you?" A soft laugh was transmitted from outside of the large hall when Feng Zun-Jie's voice had just sounded. Immediately, a couple of figures pushed open the door and slowly walked in. Xiao Yan's eyes focused on Feng Zun-Jie inside the moment he entered the large hall. He immediately sighed in relief. Feng Zun-Jie was absolutely necessary for this operation. Therefore, Xiao Yan felt reassured after having personally seen Feng Zun-Jie in the hall. 9-star Dozong? Feng Zun-Jie swept his eyes over Xiao Yan. The teacup in his hand slightly trembled as he exclaimed in surprise. He clearly remembered that Xiao Yan had only just broken through to the Dozong class when they parted ways. How could Xiao Yan's strength soar to the 9th stars in a little over a year? The face of the stern-looking Tai Jian Zun-Jie by Feng Zun-Jie's side twitched a little. Some shock flashed across his calm eyes. Feng Zun-Jie had told him in detail about the matters related to Xiao Yan. From the way Feng Zun-Jie had spoken, it was obvious that he was extremely pleased with Yao Chen's disciple. Initially, Tai Jian Zun-Jie had not been so sure about Yao Chen's disciple. However, now that he had looked over Xiao Yan personally, he finally sensed the hidden extraordinariness under this young face. "KK, I was merely lucky." Xiao Yan laughed as he walked into the large hall. The little fairy doctor, Tianhuo Zun-Jie, and the lazy-looking Zi Yan followed behind him. This girl was extremely dissatisfied that Xiao Yan had brought her to meet these old people. Was it not better to allow her to sleep a little longer? Feng Zun-Jie smiled. His eyes shifted before solidifying on the little fairy doctor and Tianhuo Zun-Jie without moving. Tianjian Zun-Jie by the side also revealed a grave expression on his old-fashioned face. His eyes were staring intently at those two. Being an elite Do-Zun, he was able to sense that this elderly person and woman seemed to possess a strength that was a little stronger than him. Who are these two? Feng Zun-Jie blinked his eyes. From the way he saw it, these two people seemed to have a deep relationship with Xiao Yan. Moreover, the thing that caused him to pay more attention was the strength of the little fairy doctor and Tianhuo Zun-Jie. From his senses, these two people had both reached the level of a 3-star Do-Zun. They are all my friends and will also be helpers during this operation. This is little fairy doctor and this is Tianhuo Zun-Jie. Xiao Yan smiled and replied. Even with Feng Zun-Jie's calmness, his heart involuntarily shook a little when he heard Xiao Yan's introduction. He had not seen Xiao Yan for slightly over a year, yet his strength had not only soared to the 9th star but two powerful friends with the strength of 3-star Do-Zuns had appeared beside him. This rapid growth really left one speechless. Oh, he is indeed worthy of being a disciple who caught the eye of that old fellow. One really cannot judge him using common sense. Feng Zun-Jie bitterly laughed in his heart. Over a year ago, Xiao Yan was merely a young fellow who had just entered the Central Plains. However, now he had already managed to make a name for himself within the Central Plains. News of that earth-shaking competition during the pill gathering had already spread across the entire Central Plains region. Bases on Feng Zun-Jie's guess, it was likely that the expressions of the Wind Lightning Pavilion would be quite interesting after hearing the news. A Tier 8 alchemist guru was not someone one could offend. This is Tai Jian Zun-Jie. He is also a helper that I have found. Oh, some of our friends in the past withdrew after hearing that we are planning to oppose the Hall of Souls. I am also unable to use any force. These people have their own factions behind them. They are afraid they might anger the Hall of Souls and that they would retaliate by washing their factions in blood. Feng Zun-Jie sighed. After which, he pointed at Tai Jian Zun-Jie by his side and said, "This Tai Jian Zun-Jie is alone and does not have any relations." Back then, he also owed a great favor to Yao Chen. Otherwise, he would not have been able to avenge his blood feud. He had taken the initiative to follow me when he heard that I was going to rescue Yao Chen. Xiao Yan quietly nodded when he heard this. It seemed that Feng Zun-Jie had been quite active during this period of time. However, the Hall of Souls was too strong. Even Dozun class experts would not dare to offend them. Nevertheless, Xiao Yan's heart felt some admiration for this Tai Jianzun J since he was able to step forward and lend his hand. Making a perfect situation more perfect might be unfortunate, but delivering help when it was needed was truly considered a treasure. Xiao Yan shall represent teacher while thanking Tai Jianzun J for his righteousness. Xiao Yan's expression was grave as he faced Tai Jianzun J, cupped his hands together, and thanked him. The reason I managed to have my revenge was because of Yao Chen's aid. Now that I have taken my revenge, I do not have anything left to be worried about. As long as that old fellow can escape and allow me to return this big favor, barging into the Hall of Souls is nothing. I also wish to meet those fellows who are neither ghosts nor humans. Tai Jianzun J's voice was somewhat hoarse as he spoke. Xiao Yan was silent when he heard the tone of this person, which appeared as though he had already tossed aside everything. The kind of people who could randomly toss themselves aside was the most terrifying. Fortunately, this person was standing on their side during this operation. Zhang Kongzi has already informed us about the news relating to Yao Chen. I have been finding helpers during this period of time and did not notice that the Hall of Souls had already shifted Yao Chen's prison. Otherwise, we might have ended up alerting them if we charged to Ming City. Feng Zun Jie fondled his beard and softly commented. However, I did not expect them to transfer him to the Death Soul mountain range. The terrain there is complicated since the cold fog is so dense. If they made a mistake and let someone flee into the deep mountains covered in cold fog, it is likely that even the Hall of Souls would have difficulty finding him. It looks like they are worried that Yao Chen will be rescued by someone. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. He said, "We do not have sufficient time. Moreover, we do not know if the Hall of Souls will receive some news and quietly transfer teacher away. If that happens, all of our effort will be wasted. Oh, we must indeed quickly resolve such a matter. Otherwise things may change if more time elapses." Feng Zun Shi nodded in agreement. After which, he looked to Xiao Yan and asked, "When do you plan to leave?" "We'll leave tomorrow," Xiao Yan replied in a deep voice. Currently, all the helpers had been gathered. Adding Feng Zun Jie and Tai Jianzun Jie, their group already possessed 5 Dozuns. Adding Xiao Yan's explosive fighting strength, they would be able to fight against 6 Dozuns. This lineup was already quite strong within the Central Plains. As long as no unexpected changes occurred, Xiao Yan felt a 70% confidence that he would be able to rescue Yao Lao from the hands of the Hall of Souls. Feng Zun Jie was slightly startled when he heard Xiao Yan's departure time. After which, he slowly nodded. He was similarly aware that this kind of thing should not be delayed for too long. Although leaving tomorrow might appear a little rushed, speed was important in a battle. They could catch the Hall of Souls off guard, snatch the person, and swiftly leave. By the time the experts from the Hall of Souls hurried over, they would only be able to stare at the situation. In that case, we will do as you say and leave tomorrow. Zhang Kongzi was also startled as he looked at Xiao Yan and Feng Zun Jie, who had swiftly decided the time they would act. He helplessly nodded as he stood up and said, "Since all of you have already decided, the old me shall wish all of you a successful operation. We'll receive old Zhan's auspicious words." Xiao Yan laughed. A stern glint suddenly surged into his dark black eyes. He had worked so hard for so many years for this day. Now, it was finally time for him to act. "Teacher, wait for disciple. This time around, I will definitely rescue you from the hands of the Hall of Souls." When the first ray of sunlight cut through the darkness and landed on the ground the next day, a couple of figures quietly rushed out of the pill tower without attracting anyone's attention. They disappeared into the sky within a couple of flashes. Wind sounded on the top of a mountain outside of Holy Pill City. A couple of figures appeared from empty space before landing on the mountain peak. "Let's go." Xiao Yan counted them. His expression was instantly covered with stern seriousness. With a low cry, his body was the first to turn into a blurry black line that shot into the distant sky in a lightning-like fashion. After which, Feng Zun Jie, the little fairy doctor, and the rest closely followed. The rescue mission had finally begun at this moment. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 289. Chapter 1218. Stone-swallowing demon ant. The Death Soul mountain range was located at the northwestern region of the Central Plains. This place could also be considered one of the more dangerous places within the Central Plains. It was rumored that many big battles had erupted in this place a long time ago. An unknown number of skeletons were buried under the soil of the mountain range. Moreover, due to this place having an extremely dense natural cold chi, it had resulted in this mountain range being covered by a cold fog all year round. One's spiritual strength would even be affected deep within this kind of cold fog. A reckless person might even be trapped to death within this mountain range. The Death Soul mountain range was not very far from the Pill region. With the speed of Xiao Yan's group, they were able to reach it in around 5 days' time. After having began their journey, Xiao Yan's group did not have many stops along the way. They basically continued traveling through the night and day. Under this craziness, the group had already sensed the surrounding temperature beginning to swiftly fall on the afternoon of the 4th day. Are we about to arrive? Xiao Yan raised his head. His eyes looked into the distance. There was the outline of a mountain range there. However, the exterior of the mountain range was covered by a layer of icy cold fog. Xiao Yan's tensed face relaxed a little as he looked at the mountain range, which appeared a little sinister under the cover of the cold fog. They had finally reached the Death Soul mountain range. With their target within close proximity, Xiao Yan waved his hand and slowly landed towards a mountaintop within a mountain range. We have arrived at the Death Soul mountain range. However, everyone should recuperate a little first. The traveling during this period of time has not been easy. Xiao Yan landed on the mountaintop. He looked at little fairy doctor and the rest, who had closely followed behind, and smilingly said. Ziyan immediately sat down on the grass below upon hearing Xiao Yan's words. Her pretty face was filled with bitterness. The traveling these few days was really about to take her little life. Is this the Death Soul mountain range? Little fairy doctor lifted her eyes and looked at the mountain range in the distance that was covered by a cold fog. She softly asked, can we directly fly into it? No, the cold fog outside is still all right. However, the further one ventured into it, the denser it would be. If we end up losing our direction at that time, we will end up losing our way inside. Moreover, those cold fog possess quite a number of mysterious magical beasts. It will be very easy for us to be ambushed. Feng Zunjie looked into the distance and replied. Moreover, this Death Soul mountain range has a branch hall of the Hall of Souls. No one can guarantee that they do not have some defensive precautions here. It is extremely easy to be discovered if we charge in from the sky. In terms of the familiarity of the Central Plains, it was likely that no one else present could be compared with Feng Zunjie. Moreover, he was also extremely experienced and was far better than Xiao Yan and the rest in this aspect. Hence, no one doubted his words. All of them nodded instead. This current season can be considered to be the time when the cold fog of the Death Soul mountain range is at its densest. However, we do not have the time to wait until the cold fog becomes thinner. Therefore, we can only enter with this fog. Feng Zunjie narrowed his eyes slightly. His gaze swept over the Death Soul mountain range as he said, there are some smaller sects and factions around the Death Soul mountain range. From what I know, most of these factions are controlled by the Hall of Souls. Therefore, we must not allow anyone to discover our trail when we enter. If someone unfortunately sees us, leave it to me. Taijian Zunjie by the side spoke in a hoarse voice. Feng Zunjie nodded quietly. This operation of theirs was really too important. Anyone who ended up knocking into them could only blame himself for being unlucky. Everyone recuperated for around half an hour on the mountaintop. After which, they stood up in Yuzhen. They looked at each other and could see a seriousness within the other party's eyes. The strength of the Hall of Souls was something that everyone present were clearly aware of. It was not an easy matter to rescue someone from their hands. If this operation fails, it is likely that we will no longer have such an opportunity in the future. Therefore, no matter what, we must rescue Yao Chen this time around. Feng Zunjie had a grave face as he spoke in a deep voice. Everyone nodded gently upon hearing this. Everyone should remain close after entering the mountain range. Be careful. Let's go. After saying these words, Feng Zunjie took the lead to move. He became just like a large bird that glided down from the mountain top. After which, he rushed into the vast forest covered by a cold fog. Xiao Yan and the others followed closely behind. White fog covered the entirety of one's sight within the forest that was permeated by a cold fog. Visibility was extremely low in this kind of environment. Even if one used one's spiritual perception, one could only sense the area within 100 meters or so around. It was impossible to extend any further. Swoosh swoosh. The waves of low and deep monster roar that occasionally sounded within the forest that was covered with white fog suddenly had some slight rushing wind sound appearing. Immediately, a couple of agile monkey-like figures broke through the cold fog. They rushed forward and swiftly headed towards the deep regions of the mountain range. As they entered deeper into the mountain range, Xiao Yan and the others also gradually met with some trouble. The size of the Death Soul mountain range was extremely large. Additionally, cold fog permeated the place. It was not easy to find the location of the Hall of Souls from within it. The map that Zhang Kongzi had given them was of some use initially. However, as they ventured deeper into the mountain range, the use of it became increasingly less. At the end, Xiao Yan's group could only rely on their own ability to gradually search this place. By advancing and searching in this manner, their speed was naturally reduced. Moreover, the thing that really caused one to feel depressed was that the effect obtained was not great. This season was when the cold fog of the Death Soul mountain range was at its peak. Some of the indicators on the map were also destroyed by this cold fog. It was likely that Zhang Kongzi and the others had not expected this. After advancing and searching for a period of time, Feng Zunjie noticed the cold fog around them gradually becoming dark. He involuntarily frowned slightly and softly said, "Night will arrive soon. We cannot continue traveling. The magical beasts within the Death Soul mountain range are extremely fierce at night. Moreover, they are just like the maggots in one's bones and are extremely difficult to shake of. If any unusual movement was created, it would not only disturb the other magical beast but it would likely also attract the attention of the experts from the Hall of Souls." Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment upon hearing this, but he could only nod his head. Feng Zunjie's experience was far from what he could compare with. It was definitely right to listen to him. Feng Zunjie made a hand signal to Tai Jian Zunjie when he saw that no one had any objections. The latter nodded and swung his hand. Some black stuff rushed out from it and flew into the distance. These are the stool of some high-rank magical beast. It is able to stop some magical beast from disturbing us. Everyone should rest for tonight. We will continue searching tomorrow. The branch hall of the Hall of Souls will definitely be quite big. Although this mountain range is very large, it is only a matter of time before we find it. Feng Zunjie softly comforted. Xiao Yan laughed bitterly. His heart felt a little depressed. Currently, they were fully prepared but they were unable to find their way after arriving at the site. This was really a little comical. Although Xiao Yan felt depressed in his heart, he did not say anything. He sat down on a tree branch and slowly shut his eyes. The other people, who had traveled for so long, also shut their eyes and rested a little. The night of the Death Soul mountain range was exceptionally dark and cool. Various howls resounded within the mountains. This caused one to feel one's pores stand. Beast roars resounded for over half a night within the mountain range before gradually disappearing. Just when everyone were about to sigh in relief, they suddenly heard some shuffling sound being transmitted from the distance. Feng Zunjie, who had his eyes tightly shut, suddenly opened them when the sound appeared. His eyes swept over the distant white fog. After which, his face changed a little as he exclaimed, "This is bad. It's the stone-swallowing ant colony?" Upon hearing the exclamation from Feng Zunjie, the expressions of Xiao Yan, Tai Jian and the rest also changed slightly. Stone-swallowing ant colony. It was a kind of extremely frightening magical beast within the Death Soul mountain range. This was not due to their strength but because they possessed terrifying numbers that could amount to tens of millions. The fierce reputation of the Death Soul mountain range was partially as a result of the cold fog. However, most of it was because this Death Soul mountain range had a kind of magical beast. This type of magical beast was the stone-swallowing demon ant. This stone-swallowing demon ant was not of a high rank. They were merely ranked 3 or 4. However, the frightening aspect of them was their numbers. This kind of terrifying ant tide that numbered to the tens of millions would swarm over from all directions. Even a rank 8 magical beast could only temporarily hide. Moreover, this kind of stone-swallowing demon ant could swallow any flesh and blood that blocked them. Anywhere within the Death Soul mountain range where the stone-swallowing demon ant tide passed would be covered with densely white bones. It was not possible to find even a trace of blood. Any expert who had accidentally entered the mountain range and meet this kind of ant colony would be no different from meeting certain death. If it was not because these stone-swallowing demon ant could only exist within the cold fog, it was likely that no one would dare to even live outside of this mountain range. The reason that the fierce reputation of the Death Soul mountain range would gradually spread over these years was largely credited to these terrifying ant colony. Xiao Yan's group had never expected that they would be so unlucky. They had met this kind of troublesome thing just after having entered the Death Soul mountain range. Prepare to withdraw. Do not engage in a head-on collision with these damn things. Feng Zunjie quickly got up and spoke in a deep voice. Xiao Yan and the rest did not dare to slight the situation upon seeing the solemn expression of Feng Zunjie. They hurriedly got up and were preparing to withdraw when a lovely little figure suddenly rushed down from the tree. After which, she charged into the forest that was covered by a cold fog. Feng Zunjie's expression changed drastically upon seeing this action of Zi Yan. He involuntarily cried out furiously, "What is this girl doing? Is she seeking death? All of you should leave first. I will rescue her." Wait, the voices of the ants had come to a halt. Little Fairy Doctor's eyebrows were vertical as she suddenly said. Feng Zunjie and the rest were also startled when they heard this. They listened carefully and did indeed realize that the shuffling sound, which left one's heart cold, had already completely disappeared. Just when Feng Zunjie and the rest had a stunned expression, a lovely little figure rushed out from the cold fog without being hurt. After which, the one who appeared on a tree was Zi Yan, who had just ran out by herself earlier. At this moment, a half-a-foot large golden-colored 8-winged large ant was on her shoulder. Stone-swallowing ant queen? Feng Zunjie's and Tai Jian Zunjie's expressions immediately changed slightly when they saw that gold-colored 8-winged large ant. Zi Yan merely laughed in face of the drastic change of the expressions of Feng Zunjie's group. Let's go. This big fellow knows where the Hall of Souls is located. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible.